You've been hurt, betrayed, dismissed, disrespected, or abandoned by someone you trusted. And your first instinct is to make them understand what they did, to explain the pain, to demand an apology, to make them see how wrong they were. Here's what you need to understand. None of that works. Words don't create regret. Explanations don't generate remorse. The people who hurt you aren't going to suddenly develop empathy because you articulated your pain more clearly. But there are behaviors, silent ones, that create a kind of psychological pressure that words never could. These aren't manipulation tactics or revenge strategies. They're natural responses to betrayal that, when executed with discipline and consistency, force the person who hurt you to confront what they've lost, not because you told them, because they figured it out themselves. And self-discovered regret hits differently than guilt you tried to impose. It's permanent. It rewires how they think about you. And it happens entirely without you saying a single word about what they did. Let's talk about the 9 silent behaviors that make people regret hurting you, and why they work on a psychological level that talking never could. The silent treatment is punishment. It's aggressive absence designed to make someone chase you or apologize. That's manipulation, and it telegraphs that you're still emotionally invested in getting a reaction. Complete emotional withdrawal is different. It's the genuine removal of your emotional availability from someone's life. You're not angry at them. You're not hurt in a way that demands acknowledgement. You've simply stopped caring whether they acknowledge anything at all. When someone hurts you and you withdraw emotionally, you're removing something they didn't know they were relying on. Your attention. Your emotional labor. Your care about their opinion or presence. These things were ambient in your relationship, so present they became invisible, until they're gone. Here's what happens psychologically. The person who hurt you initially feels relief. They got away with it. No confrontation, no drama, no consequences. But then, something starts to happen over time. They reach out expecting your usual warmth or engagement, and it's not there. Not in an angry way. In an absent way. You respond to their messages, but there's no emotional content. You're polite in person, but there's no real connection. You're present, but unavailable in a way that's impossible to argue with, because you're doing nothing wrong. You're just not there anymore in the way you used to be. This creates cognitive dissonance. They thought hurting you would go a certain way. Drama, maybe. Discussion, possibly. But not this. Not your complete indifference to whether they're in your life or not. And that indifference, that genuine lack of emotional investment, is what triggers regret. Because now they're wondering what they had that they didn't appreciate. Now they're noticing all the small ways you used to care that they took for granted, and you didn't tell them what they lost. They're discovering it themselves, one absent interaction at a time. Behavior 2. Radical self-improvement. When someone hurts you, they expect you to diminish, to spiral, to validate their decision to betray or abandon you by proving you weren't worth keeping. They need you to fail so they can justify what they did. The most psychologically devastating thing you can do is the opposite. Improve dramatically. Get in better shape. level up your career, develop new skills, become visibly more successful, more confident, more integrated as a person. And do it all without mentioning them or what happened. This isn't about revenge. It's about channeling the pain of betrayal into fuel for transformation. But the psychological effect on the person who hurt you is profound. They are watching you become better without them. They're seeing you thrive in their absence. Every improvement is evidence that you didn't need them the way they thought you did. Here's the mechanism. People who hurt you create narratives to justify their actions. You were holding them back. You weren't good enough. The relationship or friendship was limiting their potential. These narratives require you to stay stagnant or decline to remain coherent. When you radically improve instead, their entire justification framework collapses. They can't tell themselves they were escaping something inferior when you're clearly ascending. They can't believe they made the right choice when you're demonstrably thriving without them. The cognitive dissonance becomes unbearable. And you never have to say anything about it. Your visible transformation speaks louder than any confrontation could. They see your progress on social media, through mutual friends, in chance encounters. Each piece of evidence that you're better off without them chips away at their justification until regret is all that's left. The key is that this has to be genuine improvement for yourself, not performance for their benefit. If you're improving to make them jealous, they'll sense the desperation behind it. But if you're improving because you redirected all the energy you were wasting on them into yourself, that authenticity is unmistakable. And it's devastating to witness from the outside. Behavior 3. Moving on without closure. Most people think closure is essential after being hurt. You need to have the conversation. You need to understand why. You need them to acknowledge what they did and apologize. You need resolution before you can move forward. This is a trap. Seeking closure keeps you tethered to the person who hurt you. It gives them power over your healing. It communicates that you need something from them to be whole again. Moving on without closure is the opposite. It's demonstrating that their explanation, apology, or acknowledgement is irrelevant to your ability to heal and progress. You don't need their permission to move forward. You don't need their validation of your pain. You're capable of processing what happened and integrating it into your life story without their participation. This behavior creates profound regret because it reverses the power dynamic. When you seek closure, you're in the supplicant position. You need something they can choose to give or withhold. But when you move on without it, you're demonstrating that they've become irrelevant to your emotional well-being. The person who hurt you expected to maintain a certain significance in your life, even if negative. They expected you to be angry, hurt, seeking answers. They expected to matter. Your ability to move forward without needing anything from them proves they don't matter the way they thought they did. This is psychologically destabilizing for them. People want to believe they have impact, even destructive impact. Your indifference to closure suggests that what they did, while hurtful, wasn't significant enough to require their involvement in processing it. You handled it alone and moved on. They weren't even necessary for your healing. The regret comes when they realize you've rewritten the narrative of what happened without them. You've made sense of the betrayal or hurt in a way that doesn't center them or their reasons. They've been demoted from antagonist to irrelevant background character in your story, and you did it without giving them the chance to explain or defend themselves. Behavior 4. Selective visibility. This is subtle but psychologically powerful. You don't disappear completely from the person's awareness. You remain visible in specific, strategic ways that highlight what they're missing without appearing to be performing for their benefit. You show up in contexts where you're thriving. You're visible at events where you're succeeding, connecting with others, clearly enjoying your life. But you're absent from contexts where you would have previously been available to them. You're not responding to their casual reach-outs. You're not present in the ways they took for granted. This creates a contrast effect. They see evidence that you're doing well, that you're engaged with life, that you're connected to other people, but they're no longer part of that. They've been edited out of your daily existence while remaining able to observe that existence continues without them. The psychological mechanism here is exclusion awareness. Humans are wired to detect when they're being excluded from social groups. It triggers anxiety and self-examination. When the person who hurt you can see that you have a full, engaging life that they're not part of, it activates that exclusion, anxiety. They start to wonder, why? What changed? Why aren't you including them anymore? And because you haven't had a dramatic confrontation or announced your withdrawal, they can't point to a specific reason that makes you look unreasonable. You're just busy. You're just living your life. You're just not making room for them anymore. This ambiguity is crucial. If you explicitly cut them off, they can frame themselves as the victim of your overreaction. But if you simply become unavailable while remaining visibly engaged with life, they have to confront the possibility that you're choosing to invest your time and energy elsewhere. Not out of anger, out of preference. The regret develops gradually as they accumulate evidence that you're fine without them. Better than fine. Thriving. And they're on the outside of that, watching through whatever limited visibility remains. Each glimpse of your life continuing without them is a reminder of what they gave up when they hurt you. Attempts to damage their reputation or turn others against them. They're prepared for escalation because it's familiar and it validates their narrative about why the relationship or friendship ended. Refusing to engage with any of that is disarming. You don't talk about them. You don't post vague social media messages clearly directed at them. You don't try to get mutual friends to choose sides. You don't participate in gossip or shit-talking. You simply decline to make what happened into a public spectacle. This behavior is powerful because it maintains your dignity while denying them the conflict they were prepared for. They can't position themselves as the victim of your retaliation if you don't retaliate. They can't justify their actions by pointing to your behavior afterward if your behavior is unimpeachable. The psychological effect is that they're left holding all the weight of what they did. There's no drama to distract from the core issue. There's no bad behavior from you that lets them redirect attention. They hurt you, and then you just quietly exited without creating any additional problems. The simplicity of that makes it impossible to avoid the fundamental truth of who caused the harm. People who hurt others often need external chaos to avoid internal reflection. They need the drama of the aftermath to obscure the wrongness of the initial action. When you refuse to provide that chaos, you force them to sit with the unadorned reality of what they did. And here's what happens. Other people notice. Mutual friends See that you're handling the situation with grace, while the person who hurt you is either trying to create drama or defensive about why there isn't any. Your silence creates a contrast that makes their guilt more visible to everyone watching. The regret comes when they realize that your restraint has made them look worse than any retaliation could have. You maintain the moral high ground by simply refusing to descend to their level. And that restraint, that dignity in the face of hurt, makes them confront the fact that you were better than they deserved all along. Behavior 6. Building a better life without explanation. This is similar to radical self-improvement, but focused specifically on visible life changes. You move to a better apartment. You change careers. You develop a new friend group. You pick up interesting hobbies. You travel. You build a life that's demonstrably better than the one you had when the person who hurt you was in it. And you do all of this without explaining it to them or framing it in relation to what happened. You're not building a better life to spite them. You're building it because you can, because you have the time and energy and emotional bandwidth now that you're not wasting it on someone who didn't value you. The lack of explanation is crucial. If you tell them you're doing better without them, it sounds defensive. It sounds like you need them to know. But when they discover it themselves, when they see the tangible evidence that your life improved after they left it, that discovery is more powerful than anything you could claim. The psychological mechanism here is outcome evaluation. People judge their past decisions based on how things turn out. When the person who hurt you sees that your life got better without them in it, they have to reevaluate whether hurting you was the right choice. They told themselves they were doing what was best. Maybe they were even doing what was best for them in the moment. But when the outcome is that you're thriving and they're not observably happier, the decision starts to look like a mistake. Not because you told them it was, because the evidence is undeniable. The regret comes from comparison. They're comparing their life now to your life now. They're comparing how you were when they knew you to who you've become. And if the comparison doesn't favor them, if you're clearly ascending while they're stagnant or declining, they have to confront the possibility that they made the wrong choice. You don't have to say it. The life you build speaks for itself. Every improvement is a silent indictment of their decision to hurt you, and you never have to justify or explain any of it. You just live better, and they just have to watch. Behavior 7. Treating them with polite indifference. This is perhaps the most difficult behavior to execute because it requires genuine emotional detachment. Polite indifference means you're not cold to them. You're not rude. You're not trying to hurt them back. You're just not emotionally affected by them anymore in any direction. When you encounter them, you're cordial. Pleasant even. But there's no warmth, no real interest, no investment in the interaction beyond basic social courtesy. You treat them the way you treat a stranger in an elevator. Polite, brief, forgettable. This is devastating because it reveals that you've moved on emotionally in a complete way. You're not nursing anger, which would indicate they still matter. You're not avoiding them, which would suggest you're still affected. You're just neutral. They've become someone you used to know, and that past relationship holds no emotional charge for you anymore. The person who hurt you expected one of two reactions: continued emotional investment, whether through anger or sadness, or active avoidance that proves they still have power over you. Polite indifference gives them neither. It proves they have no power over your emotional state whatsoever. Here's what happens in their mind. They start to wonder if they ever mattered as much as they thought they did. Your complete indifference makes them question whether the relationship or friendship was as significant as they believed. Maybe you didn't care that much. Maybe they were more replaceable than they realized. This cognitive uncertainty creates discomfort. People want to believe they have impact, even negative impact. Your polite indifference suggests that their presence or absence in your life is ultimately inconsequential. Not because you're pretending it is, but because you genuinely feel that way now. The regret develops when they realize they've been downgraded from someone significant to someone irrelevant. And it happens so completely that you don't even register them as worth being angry at anymore. They're just someone who used to be in your life. Nothing more. Behavior 8. Demonstrating what they lost through others. This is indirect but powerful. You don't tell the person who hurt you what they lost. You show everyone else and let them hear about it secondhand. You become an exceptionally good friend to the people who remained loyal. You're supportive, present, reliable, generous with your time and energy for people who deserve it. And through mutual connections, through social proof, through the visible evidence of how you treat people who didn't betray you, the person who hurt you learns what kind of person you are. They learn what they could have had if they hadn't destroyed the relationship. This works because it's authentic. You're not performing for their benefit. You're genuinely being good to people who deserve it. But the contrast between how you treat loyal people and how you've withdrawn from them is stark. They see what they're missing, not through your words, but through your actions toward others. The psychological principle here is social comparison. People evaluate their choices by comparing outcomes. When the person who hurt you sees how good you are to people who didn't hurt you, they're forced to compare that to how you now treat them. The difference is evidence of what they sacrificed when they betrayed you. The regret comes from witnessing what they lost, not in abstract terms. In concrete, observable behaviors, they see you showing up for someone else, being generous with someone else, offering support and care to someone else, and they remember when that was directed at them, before they ruined it. And here's the key: you never have to mention them or what happened. You're just being yourself with people who deserve your best self. The fact that they no longer get access to that version of you is entirely their fault. And watching you give it to others makes that loss impossible to ignore. Behavior 9. Living well as the ultimate response. This is the culmination of all the other behaviors. Living well isn't just about success or improvement. It's about genuine contentment. It's about building a life that feels good to live, not just good to display. It's about finding peace, purpose, and satisfaction in your daily existence. When someone hurts you and you respond by genuinely living well, not despite what happened, but integrated with what happened, you demonstrate the ultimate form of resilience. You show that they couldn't break you. They couldn't diminish you. They couldn't prevent you from building something meaningful. This isn't about proving anything to them. It's about proving something to yourself, that you're capable of healing without their participation, that you can find happiness without their approval, that your well-being isn't dependent on whether they realize what they did or feel sorry for it, but the effect on them is profound. Watching someone genuinely thrive after hurting them triggers existential regret. Not just regret about the specific action, but regret about who they are as a person. Because if you can be that happy without them, if you can build that good of a life after they tried to tear yours down, what does that say about their significance? The psychological mechanism is threatening. Your happiness is a threat to their narrative. They needed you to suffer to validate their choice. They needed you to fail to prove they were right to hurt you. Your genuine well-being destroys all of that. It proves they were wrong. It proves they gave up something valuable. It proves they can't hurt you permanently. And that realization that they couldn't break you, that you're actually fine and maybe better without them, is the deepest form of regret. Because it means they lost something they can never get back. And that loss was entirely self-inflicted. The uncomfortable reality. Here's what nobody wants to admit. These behaviors work precisely because they're not designed to work. They're not manipulation tactics. They're the natural result of genuinely moving on and building a better life. The regret they create in the person who hurt you is a side effect, not the goal. If you do these things to make someone regret hurting you, they won't work. The performance will be visible. The desperation for their acknowledgement will undermine the effect. These behaviors only create authentic regret when they come from authentic detachment and growth. You can't fake emotional withdrawal. You can't fake self-improvement. You can't fake genuine well-being. The person who hurt you will sense if you're performing any of this for their benefit, and once they sense that, the psychological impact disappears. These 9 behaviors work because they represent actual healing and progression. You're not doing them to hurt the person back. You're doing them because they're the healthy, mature response to betrayal. The regret they create is simply the natural consequence of someone watching you become better without them. So if you've been hurt, if you're tempted to make someone understand what they did to you through explanations and confrontations, consider this alternative. Say nothing. Do nothing directly toward them. Just focus every ounce of your energy on these 9 silent behaviors. Withdraw emotionally. Improve radically. Move on without closure. Stay selectively visible. Refuse drama. Build better. Stay politely indifferent. Demonstrate value to others. Live well. And watch what happens. Not because you're watching for their regret, but because living this way makes you unavailable to their guilt or their excuses or their eventual attempts to reconnect. You'll be too busy being genuinely fine to notice when they finally realize what they lost. That's not revenge. That's just life moving forward without them. And there's no more powerful response to being hurt than proving that your life continues, improves, and thrives regardless of whether they're in it or not. Don't tell them what they lost. Let them figure it out. In silence. While you're busy building something they'll never be part of again.